Humans aren't property. They have the same right to live that any of us do.
The lore of Code Vein is as detailed as it is character-driven, falling somewhere between the environmental storytelling of a Soulsborne and the ensemble cast of a role-playing game. The narrative is never so straightforward. Yes, there's plenty of sharp fangs and blood drinking, but there's no vampires in this universe. Yes, this is the post-apocalypse, but would you believe society has essentially ended twice already? With all the non-linear tools of flashbacks, reveals, and amnesia, keeping track of the how and why of Code Vein's plot can be overwhelming. But don't worry, after a few dozen hours I've collected all the context required to straighten out the chronology of the original game in preparation for the sequel. As we go through the lore, feel free to chat back in the comments about how this universe's history compares and contrasts with what we know about the world of Code Vein 2, or your theories on how it connects to other games like God Hand. And I hope this goes without saying, but this is going to be non-stop spoilers.
With so much else occupying my mind, it took a long time for me to discover that I was no longer human.
Nearly every aspect of Code Vein includes some explanation of how it came to be, but one crucial plot point that's left deliberately ambiguous is the event known as the Great Collapse. Here, the world as we know it effectively ends. Later to be dubbed as the Thorns of Judgment, these branches burst from the ground, completely redefining the architecture of the planet in an instant, annihilating whatever was in its path, causing widespread death and destruction. Of course, this includes population-rich centers as seen in the main city location. With humanity's social order climbing from the ruins, mankind was ill-prepared for their first contact with the horrors. Strange, seemingly endless creatures driven to attack and consume human beings. Militaries crumble, governments fall, and the majority of the pre-collapse population is wiped from the face of the earth. Now on the brink of extinction, a group of scientists propose a bold new plan for survival. Utilize their research in the biological organ regenerative parasites or boar parasites to revive the human corpses into a new state of life. These new beings, known as revenants, still retain their physical appearance, memory, and personalities. They were even imbued with new abilities with different blood types, resulting in different powers or gifts as they were later to be dubbed, making them capable fighters in the war against monsters. But their ultimate talent is endless regeneration. Once receiving fatal damage, their remains would illuminate towards the sky, later to return completely reassembled. However, if a revenant's heart is destroyed, their bodies turn to ash, making reconstruction impossible. This is Code Vein's in-universe explanation for the Souls-like death mechanic, where players are kicked back to a save point. But believe it or not, those checkpoints don't exist yet in the timeline, so we'll get back to them. The success of the Revenants was undeniable, but with this new advantage, the remaining scientists attempted to improve on their creation. While physically surviving multiple deaths, the psychological makeup of the Revenants shattered over time, unable to recall significant portions of their personal history down to their very identity. Worse yet, their necessary diet consisted entirely of human blood, and if they didn't receive enough, their hunger would eventually drive them into becoming one of the lost. Yet another unhinged and dangerous threat to humanity who could return from death to fight another day. The Queen Project was formed to solve this problem. Together, evolutionary researcher Mido and Revenant soldier Gregorio Silva developed a boar parasite with a library of biological organisms to reduce or end the bloodlust. However, the procedure alone would require a unique test subject who could endure unbelievable amounts of pain for long periods of time. To Gregorio's surprise and reluctance, his own teenage daughter, Cruz Silva, volunteered. But Mido didn't mind overstepping ethical concerns for science. And the results, despite all the challenges, were surprisingly a change in the right direction. But only for a moment. While never requiring blood, Cruz went from mankind's greatest weapon to their latest downfall when the Queen frenzied. Not only did she directly attack and kill anyone in her path, she unleashed yet another geographical shattering event with the Queen's miasma, a substance normally produced by creatures and on top of being deadly, if inhaled enough, it will turn any revenant to frenzy. To counteract this, gas masks were developed and the miasma-absorbing plant's missile would give them a slight relief to their bloodlust. This led to Gregorio Silva launching Operation Queenslayer, where a collection of revenants fought to destroy the Queen. The members included Jack, a no-nonsense fighter, and, well, you. Yes, this is only revealed later in the game, but the central protagonist plays a crucial role in the current state of the world, including being the one to destroy the Queen for the final time, absorbing her blood and entering a torturous state. Jack and Silva end the main character's suffering, with his heart being destroyed, or so they thought. However, this wouldn't end the Queen's grip on the world. While all revenants could still be killed, she was able to revive herself even after her heart was targeted. It turns out the very abilities that made her the perfect candidate were becoming a new kind of threat. Her endurance combined with the new boar parasite allowed her to return to life by pure will alone. To prevent this, the body of Cruz was divided into different parts and transferred into relics. These relics were then given to revenant hosts who were sent into isolation to prevent casualties when they frenzied. Known as the Successors, the details of who and how they came into power is better left to their storyline appearance later on. And here, right here, is where the campaign begins.
There is a spring that will cure that thirst, one that weeps tears of blood.
While never underlined as an important moment in the plot, the in-game tutorial is rather interesting when placed in order. Throughout Code Vein, the player will gain and unlock new blood types, making them a one-of-a-kind revenant, or so it would seem. In reality, their fight with the Queen made them the successor of the Blood, so in a very direct way, Cruz is passing on her abilities to you, a story beat that most won't see for 30 hours or so. Awakening without their memory, the player meets Io, a mysterious young girl who is completely devoted to the main character, encouraging and educating him on his new abilities in her role as an attendant to a successor, and she's only one of several each assigned to their own successor. But it's during this time skip the first blood springs begin to appear, ghostly white trees that bear a unique substance that differ from blood and yet still function to quench the revenant's natural bloodthirst for an extended period of time. While a blessing, its origins remain unknown and their number remain exceedingly rare, as I'll explain in a moment. All is not well though. Despite the death of the Queen, the rest of the lost still remain, while the number of humans is cut down once again, creating a scarcity on human blood. Even though the Revenant Syndicate government has a human blood donation system in effect for protection, many only feed just enough before the boar parasite triggers their frenzy, leaving many in a state of near starvation. To make matters worse, the Queen's debilitating miasma managed to increase since her death, choking off blood springs and missile plants with red mist, rendering them useless, calling back previously held territories, falling down to one single crumbling city. And it's here Io helps the player to restore a blood spring with his successor power. Unfortunately, this sort of resource catches the eye of a wandering gang who capture both of them for labor. Unaware of who the main character is, he is sent off to search for more blood beads with his new partner, Oliver Collins. Despite being a named character, he's not long for this world. In fact, it's while wandering the caves solo that players stumble upon Louis, arguably the leader of the group you'll eventually form and a childhood friend of the Queen, but for now a complete stranger. After agreeing to an alliance, the pair return to the surface to encounter Oliver in the throes of frenzy, irreversibly joining the Lost. After Oliver's transformation is defeated, the body vanishes, leaving a vestige stone, a dangerous landmine that speaks in spooky whispers, converting those who touch it to the Lost. But out of instinct, the protagonist grabs it with open hands and the encouragement of Io, teleporting the trio into the memories of Oliver. This is a revolutionary find because the Revenants often lose portions of their memory with each death, making social progress difficult. Witnessing the player's unexplained power, Louis asks for their help in his mission to save the Revenants and humans once and for all.
But the miasma has been a real problem. It makes our thirst even worse, so our progress has stalled. Now, though, we have a glimmer of hope. Your power can clear the miasma. If you could help us.
Agreeing to join, the player and Io are invited into a well-stocked base, a refuge for like-minded altruistic revenants, and where we are introduced to our central cast of partners and shopkeepers led by Louis. There's Yakumo, an able fighter whose childhood adoption to Mido gives him a unique insight to boar parasite research before and after the Great Collapse. However, upon his initial death, the process of returning to life took longer than the rest of the first wave experiments. While exploring the memories of Yakumo's closest friend Emily, it's revealed he was nearly destroyed while unconscious by Mido, often using Yakumo's body as a bargaining chip, forcing his allies from the orphanage to do Mido's twisted bidding. Yakumo is a kind and optimistic person who celebrates his humanity by eating traditional dishes even if his body doesn't require food. However, it's through the main character's power that he learns his friends never abandoned him, in fact they were physically lugging him around the world while it was ending. There's the mysterious Davis, a powerful revenant who awoke from death to search for his beloved fiancée, only to realize she was still human and walking away to embrace his new form. Even Louis is uncertain of his true intention as he's still wearing the garb of a Cerebus government soldier, and yet he helps to take the player to the depths, optional locations for players to unlock additional items. Little about Davis is transparent, including his actual name, Tyrone. Equally deceptive is the in-house weapons master Rin Murasami. Despite being much smaller than the traditional soldier, she was among the most accomplished members in the military at a relatively young age. However, after learning her entire platoon was wiped out under her leadership, she took on a supportive role for more seasoned fighters. In reality, she was betrayed by her allies and removed from the battlefield to protect her young life from an unwinnable fight. And Coco, a shopkeeper who takes pride in her ability to acquire hard-to-find items even as the world falls apart. Her life from before is tragic but brief. Her son passed away and was never revived. She's a constant supporter of the protagonist, not just for the financial benefit, but also the main character's power to restore the missile plants and dispel the miasma of the surrounding area, making long-dormant locations accessible again, including their resources.
I couldn't stop Cruz from going into a frenzy. So many people lost their lives, including my sister. I wanted to forget my frailty.
United by their leader Louis, the plan is to re-explore these new environments inside the Jail of the Mists in search of the blood springs, and following the blood veins to better understand their source. But this quickly falls into a series of unexplained events connected to the yet-to-be-revealed successors, including the band of heroes stumbling upon Jack transmitting one of the Queen's relics to Ava, a scene we'll return to much later on. Traveling underneath the city, they encounter the gun-toting Mia and her younger brother Nicola, both on the verge of frenzy. Sharing their last blood bead, Nicola's state fails to improve, and the pair run out for more substance before encountering Jack, who seemingly destroys the young boy to prevent his transformation to the Lost. In truth, this version of Nicola was a false copy created to keep Mia company, but more on that in just a bit. Bringing her back to the base for recovery, Mia agrees to join Louis and the rest of the group in exchange for passage to the Ridge of Frozen Souls, a location she witnessed within a vision and connected to the true fate of Nicola. But she also learns to trust strangers again, becoming fast friends with Murasami and a companion to the main character. This takes the gang to the Cathedral of the Sacred Blood, an elaborate structure that shows the after effects of the Great War, including the remaining corpses of Cerberus soldiers littered throughout, and where the protagonist makes contact with their very first Successor battle. The successor of the Ribcage, Aurora Valentino, a researcher for Operation Queen who reluctantly agrees to the relic solution. But within her mind palace, she begs the main character to use his new abilities to end the suffering of the rest of the successors and restore their true personality. And it's here where we witness a new wrinkle in Louis' backstory when he discovers his lost sister Karen is not only the successor of the heart, but she is the true source of the blood springs, completely derailing his scientific ambitions to a familiar and spiritual tragedy. Without any signs of frenzy and the necessity of blood beads, Louis is forced to leave her behind as they continue their journey.
I didn't know. I never even suspected. Poor Nicola was alone this whole time.
At last, Mia reconnects with the Ridge of Frozen Souls and sees yet another duplicate of Nicola who leaves a vestige behind. Exploring the memories of Nicola, Mia learns the devastating truth. While still in her death state, Mia is unable to prevent Nicola from volunteering to become the successor of the Breath with the help of Jack. But worrying about his sister, he creates a false copy, explaining why the previous version following Mia couldn't recover. In fact, Nicola has been using duplicates of himself to physically fight against the corrupting forces of the Queen's relic. After defeating an out-of-control knight, the vestige within allows Mia to speak directly to the real Nicola. The encounter leaves her newly committed in the campaign against the successors and gives her a sense of closure and community. But this morale boost is short-lived when the base is invaded by an injured and bloodthirsty Ava. Once rested, she explains her role as a temporary vessel for the relics, as successors have always shown the potential for frenzy. Agreeing to Eva's request for help, Louis leads the band to Jack's location where he explains the successors' relics are being stolen by Mido. Yakumo agrees that Mido must be stopped, describing the horrendous torture he inflicted on the rest of the orphans. In fact, in a flashback, it's revealed Mido persuaded Gregoria Silva into approving the creation of the relics. But things become even more personal for Yakumo as he learns his lifelong friend Emily Sue became the successor of the Claw, transforming her entire domain into a constant inferno, with her pain becoming the literal fuel for the fire. Inside her vestige, Yakumo and Emily embrace one last time before she turns to stone. However, it's revealed Ava's escape from Mido was intentional. He'd already inoculated her with a frenzy enhancer, and to make sure no one would be able to prevent her transformation, he forced Louis to mobilize a rescue mission, leaving Ava to enter Bloodlust alone. While traumatized, Jack returns to his stony resolve, informing the Revenants about an oath between the two to destroy the others should they become part of the Lost. Fulfilling that promise, Jack announces his intention to go after Mido and reveals the shocking truth about the Queen's miasma. It turns out this was the creation of Gregorio Silva, who took on one of his daughter's own relics to become the successor of the Brain. Accepting the Revenants had become too much of a risk to the surviving humans outside the Jail of the Mist, Silva sealed up the city from the rest of the world.
They will be the source of even greater strength for all Revenants. Evolution is everything. It is our duty, our very hope as a species.
Following Mido, the scientist unleashes his newest twisted experiments, including mindless Revenants imbued with the Successor relics, who he sacrifices to join Silva and trigger his transformation. But it's here we learn Mido isn't interested in reviving the Queen. He simply wants to destroy the Red Mist. Why? Well, it turns out the horrors have continued to evolve ever since Operation Queenslayer, and their current incarnations can easily consume a Revenant. Mido is disgusted by Gregorio's protection and insists the next stage will be developed through unimpeded conflict. But sadly for Mido, he can't keep up with his theory and falls after an intense fight. This leads our protagonist to his final encounter with Gregorio Silva, and with his defeat, the Red Mist evaporates. But what happens next depends on your actions. Remember the discussion with Aurora Valentino? Well, it's not quite so straightforward. As the protagonist witnesses the tearful goodbyes with the Successors, he can then follow up to revive them of their frenzy or not. And depending on if you help none, one, or all, you receive 3 distinct endings with brief flourishes for completionists. If all the Successors are left unrestored, players are given the darkest outcome. Here, the protagonist absorbs Silva's power, including the several relics inside of him. This causes the main character to frenzy, and unable to control himself, Louis volunteers to execute him, blaming himself for the results. What follows is a montage of the Revenants lingering at the death sites of their loved ones. Meanwhile, Louis is forced to take the throne as the new successor of the Brain, where he will remain just like his sister, as there's no one strong or trustworthy enough to control the Mist. However, if the player restores some but not all of the Successors, there's an equally sad turn. Once again, the Red Mist must be restored to protect the population, and without all their gathered knowledge, the main character takes on the role of the successor of the Brain, resting upon the throne for all eternity with Io by their side. But the final and best ending requires a bit more of an explanation. Just before entering the Jail of the Stagnant Blood, Io encounters the remaining attendants of the stolen relics, and they warn her that she will only cause fate to repeat itself. However, if you've restored all of the Successors, Io will contradict them and explain that she's experienced the lives of others through the player's ability to revive memories. While the previous attendants didn't know what to do, she does. Except when the main character reaches out, Io interrupts, instead insisting that this is her role as an attendant. This begins the release of the relics, including the ones still contained inside the player, Jack, and Eva, before she transforms into a harmless tree which will serve as the new source and freeing the previous Successors from the Jail of the Mist with a special blood bead. Even Murasame joins the crew as they head off towards the unknown, no longer living in fear of the Queen thanks to the sacrifice of Io. But this so far is where the story ends, and perhaps where this version of Code Vein will stay for now. Despite being the first numbered sequel, the developers have signaled that Code Vein 2 will take place in an entirely different timeline, which has many fans of the first game like myself wondering if we'll see any nods to these characters or specific events. Regardless, Code Vein is a special narrative that still has many undiscovered avenues. Perhaps there was more to Davis that we could learn about. He's oddly absent in the ending and unavailable as a companion. The world outside the Mist is a complete mystery, as is Louis' sister Karen in this new world. It's unclear if we'll ever see resolution to these threads, so why not a chat back in the comments about what you think happened in these stories? And while you're at it, why not mention if you found connections to other games in the comments below? Check out GameRant.com for even more cool Code Vein stuff, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks everybody!